Hello everybody, thank you for joining me on this beautiful sunny day in Salford. I'm here on the top of a park on Moor Lane, and let's dive straight in. So just following from the last daf, Rabbi Huda says, considering a similar topic, if witnesses saw a person who entered another's house, concealed items beneath his garments and left, and the person says they were purchased, and this is why they input my possession, is not deemed credible. So what does that mean? Va'ama lekuchin heim v'chulu. If witnesses testify that someone entered another's house while that other person was there and left with items concealed beneath his garment, and the homeowner demands that he return his possessions that he loaned him, while the defendant claims that he purchased those items, the defendant's claim is not deemed credible. The homeowner takes an oath of inducement to support his claim and receives the items. This is the halacha, provided that the homeowner does not typically sell his belongings, the other person is not used to concealing his belongings, and the items are not of the type that are usually concealed. Therefore, the items must be returned, as it appears that the other person took them in this manner in order to deny that he borrowed them. But if one of these conditions is not fulfilled, e.g. the homeowner typically sells his belongings, then after the other person takes an oath of inducement, his claim that he purchased the items is deemed credible, since the homeowner may have needed money and sold the items in question. And that's the Rambam Sefer Mishpat Cohen Venitan 9:4 Shulchan Aruch Mitzvot 90:11, and see also 90:12-14. And we said that this only with regard to items taken from the homeowner who is not apt to sell his items. With regard to a homeowner who is apt to sell his items, the one taking the items is deemed credible. And even with regard to a homeowner who is not apt to sell his items, we said that the one carrying the items is not deemed credible only with regard to items that are not typically concealed. With regard to items that are typically concealed, he is deemed credible. And even with regard to items that are not typically concealed, we said that he is not deemed credible only with regard to a person who is not generally secretive, but with regard to a person who is generally secretive, that is his manner. He would be likely to conceal items beneath his clothing, and he is deemed credible. And we said this only when the homeowner says the items are borrowed, and that one who took the items says they are purchased. But in a case where the homeowner claims that the items are stolen, it is not in his power to have his accusation accepted, as we do not presume the person to be a thief. Bignuvin love kol kamine. This is so because if the claimant makes an unsupported claim that another person has an item that actually belongs to him, and that he stole it from him, that claim is not deemed credible. The reason is that, without proof, no one has license to accuse others and cast upon them the suspicion of being thieves. Rabbeinu Tamar in Sefer Hashar, and if the defendant has the presumptive status of a thief, or if it is clear that there has been a theft from the house of the claimant, then the claimant can claim items were stolen and be deemed credible. Furthermore, we said that the one who claims he purchased the items is not deemed credible only with regard to items that are typically lent. Devarmish ha'asuin lahashkil. Items are typically lent. This phrase is interpreted by the Rambam in a narrow sense to mean items that are intended from the inception for lending or renting out, such as large pots and the like, which are used infrequently by the owner and are often lent or rented out to others who may need them for preparation of a special festive meal or the like. By contrast, many other early commentaries, including the Ramban, takes the phrase simply to mean that people are usually willing to rent out or lend to others. The owners of fragile, personal, or especially expensive items are not usually willing to lend them to others, but other items are often lent or rented out. These commentaries also note that the habits of the owner and the supposed borrower must be examined, as well as their previous relationship. If the owner is not someone who tends to lend items that others would lend, then it cannot be assumed this item was lent by him. Similarly, if the supposed borrower is not someone who generally borrows or rents, then he cannot claim that he borrowed these items. And if they have no previous relationship, it is unlikely that one of them lent these items to the other. See the Ramban, Rivta, and Tosfot. The known owner of items that are typically lent or rented out always has the presumptive ownership of those items, even if a claimant removed them from the house of the known owner in an open manner, and even if this owner is known to sell his belongings. Since the owner has witnesses that these items are typically lent or rented, the court removes from them the possession of the claimant until he has been proof of his claim. Rambam Sefer Mishpat V'Nitan 9:4 Shulchan Aruch Mitzvot 90:11-14. Who rented, where the homeowners claim that they must be returned is more reasonable, but for items that are not typically lent or rented, the early commentaries had different versions of the text of the discussion which influenced their conclusions as to the practical halacha. Rashi's version of the main phrase here is that Rashi's version of the main phrase here is, and we said that the defendant's story is not deemed credible only with regard to items that are typically lent or rented. This version presents this phrase as an additional stipulation as to when the defendant's claim is not deemed credible, and it states that specifically when items are typically lent or rented, the defendant's claim is not deemed credible, and the homeowner's claim that the item is a loan or rental and must be returned is accepted. Rabbeinu Hananiah's version of that phrase is, and we stated all of these conditions in which the defendant's story is deemed credible only for items that are not typically lent or rented. This version presents this phrase as stating that all of the conditions that the defendant's story seems credible, e.g. a homeowner who is likely to sell his possessions, apply only to items that are not typically lent or rented. If they are typically lent or rented, the homeowner's claim is incredible and the item must be returned to him. See Tosfot. Some commentaries maintain that with regard to items that are typically lent or rented, even if the defendant was not seen hiding them, the homeowner's claim is accepted, says the Rif, while others hold that one of the stipulations for acceptance of the homeowner's claim is that the defendant must be seen hiding the items. Rabbeinu Hananiah, Rav Hayagon, see the Rimigas and the Ramban. The person who took them is deemed credible. As Rav Hunan bar Avin sent a ruling to the sages with regard to items that are typically lent or rented that someone took and said they were purchased and that is why they are in my possession, he is not deemed credible. This is like that instant where Rav ruled to expropriate fabric scissors. Suga de Saubala V'chulu. If one claims ownership of an item that is typically lent or rented, and for which he has witnesses that he possessed it, and he sees it in the hands of another person, though he has no proof of how it reached the other person, his claim is incredible. The one in possession of it cannot claim that he purchased it or the like, and he must return to the claimant. Even if the one in possession of it dies, the claimant receives the item from the heirs without taking an oath. Some maintain that he must take an oath to receive it. Rambam said in the Gaon and the Raiva, this is the definitive ruling to the Ramah. If the heirs claim with certainty that they saw the item being sold or given to the person who bequeathed it to them, the claimant must take an oath of inducement. Rambam says from Mishpat Mehuchaton V'Nitan 83 Shulchan Aruch Mitzvah 133.5 on the book of Agada. Generally, Agada is taken to include all the sections of the Talmud that are not halachic in nature and therefore not subject to any final definitive ruling. Consequently, all the theological and philosophical discussions, stories about individuals, ethical guidance, and other such subjects are included in a category that is by no means homogeneous. Agada. Even during the early history of the Oral Torah, when the sages prohibited dissemination of oral traditions in writing, some individuals took their own notes in order to remember this material, or kept personal notes in secret manuscripts or like books. The book mentioned here was likely a set of notes of the sage's exposition in the Agada that may have been the basis for a collection of Agadas such as the Midrash Rabbah and other such works from orphans whose father had taken them, as they were items that are typically lent or rented. The oath of one who was robbed can be taken by others as well. Rava says, even if a watchman at the house can take an oath, and even the wife of a watchman can take an oath. Just as it is incredible to take an oath and receive payment of his claim, so is his watchman, or even the watchman's wife, allowed to take an oath that so-and-so took certain items from the owner's house, and such